welcome to the 20th SIRC 2024. Now, just in a few minutes, we're going to be speaking to Mr. Tony Atkins and Mr. Himavan Mulugu from Aon. We're going to be touching on some points regarding the big risks, challenges, opportunities, and what is forecasted for the next 12 months in the APAC reinsurance region. Now, my first question would be to Mr. Himavan. In terms of risks, what net cat activities are we seeing in the APAC region?
So, year to date, the APAC cat activity has been below average, and that's below decadal average. Now, that's not saying that there were no events. There was a significant event, Typhoon Yagi, very recently, both from a humanitarian aspect as well as from economic loss aspect. But because there is so much protection gap in this region, that also presents an opportunity to reinsurers and insurers. So, other than that, I think quite a lot of flood losses, which is the main peril here, came from the 2021 event in Malaysia, which was sort of an eye-opener, and that drove the regulatory aspect as well as insurers and reinsurers to make sure they quantify their risk properly. And we are helping our clients to underwrite better with more clarity and confidence, protect their book, at the same time also think about where they can grow. So cat models hold the cat management practice within Aon, cat model development within impact forecasting. Both these aspects, they underpin that protection as well as growth aspect.
And what sort of innovation have been sort of introduced to answer these issues?
So, in my personal view, every 5 years, every 3 years, hydrometeorological perils like flood and tropical cyclone, these models need to be updated. And every 5 years, you also see quite a lot of improvement in computational capacity, data availability, the talent that we have access to, the universities that we collaborate with, the climate models that are being produced. So, the main innovation is in using better data, better computation resources, doing modeling at a very high resolution. And the key theme here is the model is only as good as the data which goes in. And the talent that we have at Impact Forecasting, which support our clients, that is also the second part of the puzzle. So we are looking to develop more and more sophisticated models because even in Asia, the insurance and reinsurance companies, they are leveraging more and more data and they're consuming more and more data every day. So the data aspect, improving or integrating artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms within the workflows, creating very intuitive tools, easy to use tools, but underpinned by very sophisticated science. I think that is the real innovation that we have been doing over the last 3-4 years. There is also the aspect where when a typhoon or tropical cyclone is imminent, how can an insurer get what sort of losses they can expect 5 days, 6 days before the landfall? So we have a system called automated event response, which takes a meteorological forecast and converts it into a loss forecast. Now, you might wonder, why is it useful? So the usefulness comes from where an insurer can deploy their resources for claims management, disaster risk response, just so that they have enough for their reserving and they can respond better to these catastrophes. So I think that's almost at the cutting edge of innovation within cat modeling.
Thank you, Mr. Himavan. Now, Mr. Tony, I've got a question for you. In terms of opportunities, what sort of opportunities do you see for growth around the APAC region?
Well, Asia-Pacific region, as you may be aware, is one of the largest growing global regions in the world in terms of premiums on a year-to-year basis. So from that perspective, we're seeing all sorts of clients, from reinsurers to specialty players to your more retail entities, all looking in the Asia-Pacific region for areas of growth. So we're speaking to our clients a lot at the moment in terms of territories such as India, Indonesia, Singapore as well. India is a phenomenal place for growth. We're seeing sort of 20 to 30% in terms of growth, depending on lines of business year on year, especially in the specialty side. And a lot of clients are already thinking about how best to access that region. The other key territories that we're seeing are places like Indonesia and Singapore. Singapore is a place where obviously we're hosting the SIRC here for 2024 and have done for multiple years, but Singapore has always been a great place to have a headquarters and then use that as a base to reinsure out into the region. So collectively across the region we're seeing a great amount of growth, but the key important areas I would believe would be in terms of the specialty risk, as the risks are getting more complicated in Asia Pacific, and also the reinsurance of that. So there's plenty of opportunity for insurers and reinsurers within this region at the moment.
And how do we grow in a profitable way?
So this is the key question, because you look at the statistics, right, and you can see Asia Pacific is growing by a certain amount every year, but you don't want to just chuck money in and lose it. You want to do it in a profitable basis. So how we're helping clients is that we're sitting down with them, we're understanding their risk appetite, and they're detailing to us what sort of territories they're looking at. So with one client, they were focusing very much on specialty risk, and we looked at sort of 10 territories within the region. They had a specific line of business requirement, and with the underlying broking data that we have at Aon, we are able to identify what are the segments that are working well, what are the segments that aren't. And of course you need to always think about return on capital as well in those performance statistics. So we were able to identify 2 territories that might be best fit for them in terms of risk appetite statement and performance, and then now they're looking at growing in those territories to then think about, you know, whether they go for a license, whether they go for an acquisition. So there's plenty of ways, and I think the key question around profitability is not just about a one-off situation, it's about sustainable profitable. So Aon's recently brought out its new position in terms of profitable growth, but from my perspective it's got to be sustainable profitable growth, and with that, you know, companies can be very successful in Asia Pacific.
Let's talk a little bit about regulatory changes. So in your opinion, what sort of recent regulatory changes have made a significant amount of impact in the APAC region?
So there's been a number of regulatory changes that we're currently looking at the moment. So Japan has had a refocus on their capital requirements. So within Japan at the moment, there's been a focus on companies that are able to invest, are not able to invest in one another. So obviously the Japanese giants, they need to think about, with this excess capital they now have, what's the best way of investing that, whether that's by inorganic growth, organic growth, or whether they, you know, make some of their operations a little bit more efficient. We're also seeing in India lots of things to try and make India its own international reinsurance and insurance hub in its own right. So one of the aspects they brought in is the gift city arrangement. So we've got plenty of clients reaching out to us at the moment to understand, what does this mean from a tax perspective, what does this mean from a regulatory perspective, and how can I take advantage of, you know, the positioning there. On the other side, we're also seeing in Indonesia that they've been brought out some regulations in terms of increasing capital, minimum capital requirements in Indonesia. What this is leading to is a lot of Indonesian companies thinking about the long-term way forward. Are they going to think about merging with another entity? Are they going to seek further backing from another player? Or are they going to move into runoff? So Asia Pac, as always has been, is a very exciting place. There's 20 countries, all with different things, but those are some of the highlights we're seeing at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. And Mr. Himavan, I've got a question for you just to wrap up the interview. What are you forecasting for the next 12 months for the APAC reinsurance sector?
Purely from a CAT perspective, I already mentioned automated event response. So I think services and tools like that, we are going to see more of them rather than less of them. The other aspect is, you might have heard or read about the Nepal floods recently, and the human toll is quite large there, as well as the economic losses. So more and more, I think in the next 12 months, 2 years, there will be a focus on shortening the protection gap, as well as utilizing more data to create better models. That's purely from a CAT perspective. Now, there is also, and this is my personal view, that there will be more and more tools where insurer or a corporation can leverage high-resolution CAT models, input their portfolio into the system, and ask a question where I can grow. So with ChatGPT, generative AI, all the LLMs that are in place, I think that is a natural extension of what might happen, maybe not in the next 12 months, but in the next 3, 4, 5 years. So, yeah.
And how has SIRC been for you for the past however long you've been attending, or even this year?
So I've moved to Singapore in 2016, so that makes it 8th year, but COVID barring, around 6. It's always my pleasure to attend the SIRC. There are so many clients and colleagues to meet, so much to learn from others. So it's really been a privilege.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And what about you, Mr. Tony?
Thank you very much. No, I love being at SIRC every year. As Himavan said, there's so many clients, so many colleagues, so many friends that we meet on a regular basis, and it's great to see how they've discussed things last year, what things have changed this year, and how they go forwards. Looking forward. So, what I'm hoping to see is lots of changes in the Asia Pac, given it's a whole Asia Pac market here. Lots of changes in terms of the Asia Pac to build on sort of profitable growth, and whether that means that we need to start thinking about automating things as well, and also the life and health space. So there's lots of activity and lots of great discussions here, which is why it's always a great place to attend year on year.
Great, that's great to hear. Thank you, Mr. Tony. Thank you, Mr. Himavan. Thank you.